A peak body representing Indigenous Australians has slammed tough new state and territory laws aimed at curbing youth crime. It comes after a group of Aboriginal legal and human rights groups lodged a complaint to the United Nations asking whether the laws are racially discriminatory. They say laws which crack down on bail, allow children under 14 to be jailed and remove the principle of detention as a last resort are hurting Indigenous children. Human rights lawyer Dr Hannah McGlade spoke to the ABC's Indigenous Affairs team.
We know Aboriginal children are actually losing their lives from some of these cruel, inhumane practices and laws that are happening across the country, and it needs to stop. These are vulnerable children who deserve our utmost support and protection. The research is, as we've pointed out, that Aboriginal children fare worse at every stage of the legal system. There's no disputing that they are more likely to be charged than cautioned, arrested and incarcerated.
Carly Warner is chair of the National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Legal Services. She's urging state and territory governments to rethink their approach.
Aboriginal children are being sacrificed for political gain. Aboriginal children and their communities are paying the price for government's failed policies. We've got more police, tougher penalties and harsh bail laws, and they're only going to lock up another generation of our children and devastate our communities for generations to come. 2/3 of the children in youth prisons are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander, but they were only 6.6% of the Australian youth population. The overrepresentation is huge, and Aboriginal children in youth prisons are also more likely to be unsentenced and imprisoned on remand than non-Indigenous children. Locking up kids is an express ticket to a life of crime and suffering. We know throwing children in prison makes them more likely to become trapped in an ongoing cycle of crime and imprisonment, which only harms them and all of our communities. Locking up kids makes communities more dangerous. When we force them into prison, we're giving them an apprenticeship into a criminal world, and they are more likely to offend again than if they hadn't been locked up in the first place. Forcing more children into jail makes crimes worse, not better.
When you say that governments are sacrificing Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children, what do you mean?
Right now, there's a national trend of governments locking up children. More and more state and territory governments are prioritising looking tough rather than implementing evidence-based policy that will make communities safer. These laws are not only dangerous for children, they will backfire, and they're going to compound the disadvantage and trauma experienced by too many of our young people and communities. So it's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children and communities who are the ones that are paying the price, and this will destroy lives and make communities more dangerous.
The most recent election campaigns in the Northern Territory and Queensland both had a what they would describe as a tough on crime approach, and we saw changes of government in both of those jurisdictions. Is that specifically what you're referring to?
It is. They've reintroduced the use of spit hoods on children. This is against recommendations of the 2017 Royal Commission. They've expanded the presumption against bail for various offences. They've reintroduced breaches of bail as an offence for children. This does not work for children. It never has, and it is not going to work anywhere else that it is tried. These are exactly the types of dangerous laws that are imprisoning more children, and it's not going to fix a thing on the ground. Putting more children in jail hasn't worked for New South Wales, Queensland, or the Northern Territory governments in the short term, and it definitely won't work in the long term. Instead, it's going to ensure another generation of children are criminalised for social need, compounding generations of trauma and disadvantage, and it will guarantee more crime and more dangerous communities.
And both of those political leaders in the Northern Territory and in Queensland, Carly, would say that this is about keeping communities safe. You're clearly saying that it doesn't have that outcome. So what would you say to their language and their approaches?
Communities deserve solutions that actually prevent crime in the first place. investment in community-led supports and services that prevent children from interacting with the criminal justice system in the first place is the best way to strengthen our communities and to keep all of us safe. The decisions that state and territory governments make now will have impacts for generations to come.
And before we began speaking with you, you heard from Dr. Hannah McGlade there, who's lodged this complaint in the United Nations, arguing that the laws that we're discussing, that say they crack down on bail and that also remove the principles of detention as a last resort, are hurting Indigenous children. Dr. Hannah McGlade and a number of other human rights lawyers and Indigenous experts are saying that this needs to be seriously looked at and that these reforms are racially discriminatory. What do you say to that move and to the calls for the United Nations to investigate?
We absolutely welcome the United Nations investigating this. We have been raising the alarm domestically for a very long time, and we are constantly met with a rhetoric of, but we have to do something. And then absolutely, we must do something, but we have to do something that actually works. Even a short time in prison for a child compounds the trauma that drives them into contact with the criminal process in the first place. They're exposed to more sophisticated criminal behaviour in prison, and forcing more children into prison has not fixed a thing on the ground, and it's making regional communities more dangerous. The only solution here is to prevent crime in the first place, and to do that we need solutions that actually work, and we need governments actually stepping up to implement those solutions. We've had a range of premiers and first ministers across the country who have admitted that the laws that they are passing will have a disproportionate impact on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children. They themselves admit this. We've also had the Prime Minister come out supporting the steps that have been taken in Victoria recently that will disproportionately impact Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children. These proven solutions that are constantly being ignored in favour of tough on crime politicking is going to be a whole lot of wasted taxpayer money, a whole lot of children in jail, and a whole lot more crime. It's time that we actually invest in the solutions that work.
Carly Warner, Chair of the National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Legal Services, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you, Dan.